Hello to our audience. Thank you for joining our Planet in Focus filmmaker discussion today. I'm Leslie Johnson, senior programmer, and I'm joined with Robin Petre, and we are discussing her latest film, From the Wild Sea. So thank you for joining us, Robin. Welcome.
Thank you very
How
much.
are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm good, thank you.
Okay, great. So why don't we begin by maybe just telling me what your film is about and what inspired you to make it?
Right. Well, the film follows rescue procedures along the coastlines of Ireland, England, and Holland. And we're following rescue volunteers who are trying to save marine wildlife, seals, different birds, a whale, these kinds of animals from mainly man-made problems like oil spills and climate change storms. So this is sort of the frame around the film, but what the film does a little bit different is that it actually follows these procedures largely from the perspective of the animal patients themselves. So it's also a film about just our whole coexistence with animals, with nature, and this continuous gaze in the film that is back and forth between the animals, the people, but also the audience and the animals. The film is trying to establish a sort of connection between different people and animals. And actually, it was quite a journey that brought me to these coastlines and these rescue volunteers. The film research didn't really start there, it ended there. But what I was looking into and what I was really interested in at the very beginning was cross-species empathy. So what drives us to, for instance, want to save a dolphin is not like logical for us in any way. We don't really benefit from doing that. If you think about sort of covering our own needs for survival as a species, it makes sense to protect other human beings, to protect our own pack, but why would we maybe risk our lives or put any effort at all into saving another, like an entirely different species? And there's also been examples of dolphins trying to save people from drowning. Maybe you've heard of it, but yeah, there's been some cases. So why would a dolphin do that? Why would we try to save them? What is going on here? And I really just wanted to investigate this, which then led me to these rescue volunteers. And gradually the film became more and more also about these man-made problems like pollution and so on.
And so, you know, what did you learn in the process about the relationship that humans have with animals from the sea? You know, I guess it's a question that I also have about the aesthetic of the film that sort of comes in and out of the perspective of the animals and their caregivers. So what did you learn about the relationship in that process?
Well, I mean, I learned a million things doing this because I didn't know anything beforehand about wildlife rescue, actually, or marine wildlife rescue at all. But what I really want to do with the film is actually to not give so many answers, especially not before people watch the film. I really want to leave the film open for different interpretations, different impressions. It's almost like a sensory journey to watch the film, or at least that was my intention. So I don't think I want to say too much about, like, to explain the film too much, but there's a bunch of things I learned about seals, about dolphins and the care for them, of course, and also how they react to people. But you have to see the film to just study these interactions and see how people and animals are reacting around each other and how they are behaving in different ways. What I find really interesting is that these super intelligent animals, the seals, they react so differently when they enter our human world. So it's not like they are just a seal is a seal is a seal and they all behave the same if a human goes close. It's much like a dog or a cat, like they have different personalities actually. So each seal has a totally different behavior in an animal hospital, like you see in the film. That could be a whole film in itself, just that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I appreciated the unflinching manner in which you showed the animals, who are unfortunately often quite distressed or coming in dire circumstances. But I think it's very necessary to show these circumstances, you know, to kind of get at the bigger questions that you are asking in the film. But you also balance it with, you know, very tender moments of care with their caregivers. Maybe tell me a little bit about sort of achieving the balance in the tone that you were trying to create in the film.
Right. Well, it's a difficult universe to enter, this rescue universe, because of course the animals are hurt, otherwise they wouldn't be in a hospital, and they're scared because they're wild animals. They don't understand where they are or what is happening to them. But still, if you want to try to do anything for them, if you want to try to save the individual animal, you have to take them into this hospital care. But of course, it's rough. It's not like a Disney movie, but this is the real world actually.
Absolutely.
And I hope to also give this perspective that trying to sort of fix nature. Can we fix nature, right? We've really impacted nature very much in some ways that are very negative, such as pollution. But how do we combat this issue? It's not easy, and I don't even have the answer. I just really think that it's something that we need to talk about. I think we have to have this discussion, because we keep pushing nature, so we're pushing sort of towards a future in which we might have to intervene even more in the lives of wild animals. And
Yeah.
of course, I think we can all agree, and also the rescue volunteers in the film, they're not naive. Of course, they would also agree that, I mean, it would be a better world if they didn't have to do this work at all, if the animals were just, if they didn't need this care, right? But this is not the case. I mean, this is the reality we're living in now. So yeah, I think it's important to look at that.
I think that what happens to animals is such a big, you know, visible indicator of what is happening with climate change. You know, they're very much the canaries in the coal mine, and they're sort of telling us by, you know, what's changing in their world, you know, what is happening. And so I was wondering, what did you observe about how climate change is impacting the sea and impacting these animals?
Right. I mean, to really know about this, you would have to spend longer than even I did. I mean, you would have to be on the beach year after year, like Dan, the biologist in the film, and one of the main rescuers, you can say, in the film. So he's been doing this work for about 20 years. And what he really experiences is that, like, his work is getting more difficult because the weather is getting worse, more storms, longer storms. When we were filming, two major storms were hitting Cornwall, England, just right after the other, like one storm after the other. And so it's like you barely get to breathe, and then another one comes in. So of course I felt the impact on my own body, and I was there to see how it impacted everyone else and the animals of the sea. But I think this bigger perspective of the change is something that comes through in the film, and for me also through someone like him who has this experience.
It must have been quite difficult and challenging to film in the particular season that you were. Can you tell me about why you were shooting in that location and in that particular season?
Right. So for different reasons, I mean, the film is very determined by seasons, and what we were trying to do was to film the most rough season of the year for the seal rescuers. And I mean, generally in animal rescue, of course, it's more difficult in the winter time, less pleasant, but they really have like a winter storm season. So they're talking about the first storm of the season, you know, how they're progressing, and each storm has a name, like you also see in the film. So so I wanted to frame the film around the rough season, the sort of the peak of these winter storms.
Yeah, it looked it certainly comes across in the film. It looks very harsh and challenging to be out there. And I think that it really kind of like helps situate us in the perspective of the animals that are living through those conditions. And what kinds of questions or actions do you think, like, are you kind of getting at in like a bigger perspective in the film? What do we need to be asking ourselves, and what do we need to be doing?
Right. I mean, I really, really hope that people will take the film with them after watching and discuss it with people around them, and to spark a debate about this, and to talk about the climate change and the future for nature, the future of the planet, not just from our own perspective, but actually a larger perspective. I'm trying to open up this discussion about climate change and pollution to include other beings than human beings, so to say, because I mean, not just for their sake, not because you think a seal, you might think a seal is cute, but it's not really about that. It's actually about our own survival as well. I really don't believe, I don't think it's naive to say that we won't survive if there's no animals. I mean, we need the bees and the dolphins and a healthy ecosystem. We need all of these. So I think it's like the most important thing of our time, actually, the climate change, the biodiversity loss, the ecosystem collapse. It's sort of a collapse of life on Earth if we don't act. And what that act exactly should be, I think it's a very individual and personal thing, because not everybody has access, not everybody can do the same, but I think everybody can do something. And I think everything starts with us talking about it, feeling something, and then talking about that, and pushing for a positive change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something that I think about when I'm thinking about the sea, and I think that comes across with your film also, is, how what is happening in the ocean and with, sorry, my voice is going a little bit, and
No
with
worries.
animals is also quite borderless, and that's such a big question, and a more difficult sort of like facet of the question is that, these seals, there's ones ending up over here, they should be in a more northern place. And so that's quite connected into climate change. And then when we're looking at conservation, sort of how do we kind of address these issues on a bigger level than just sort of like the nation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sea really is sort of the last wilderness, because it's the last place on Earth that hasn't been totally explored and totally exploited in every way, everywhere. So yeah, and it's, I mean, I think also, yeah, the sea is borderless, but also this imaginary border between us and the underwater, I think is very much existing in our minds. I think we're actually closer to these animals and to this ecosystem than we like to think. Maybe because, I mean, they're struggling, and I mean, yeah, I think it's hard to find a place actually where animals are not struggling these days.
Yeah.
Because habitats are getting smaller and smaller.
Well, we certainly appreciated the way that this film, kind of in a beautiful and subtle way provokes at these bigger questions. So thank you so much for your lovely film. And it was really great to talk to you about it.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.